So we're due to have Faye and Hannah from Bernardo's in North Cumbria. I don't think they're here yet. So hopefully they'll join us in a short while. And then Nurjahan and Rob are going to talk to us more about social prescribing services for older people and share some work that they've been doing through NASP, the National Association for Social Prescribing. And our third speaker is Dawn from Hartley Power, who is going to share some work that Hartley Power have been doing in collaboration with the young person's social prescriber, and share a video about what they've achieved down in Hartlepool. So a nice mix, I think, of young persons and older people's social prescribing schemes to kind of explore and find out about. So I'm not going to say much more. I'll be around at the end if people have any questions, but I'll going to hand over to Nurjahan, if that's okay.
Brilliant. Yes, thank you. So thank you, Tom, for just scrolling to my slides. So everyone, I'm Nurjahan Ali Arobi. I work at the National Academy for Social Prescribing, and I've got my email address there on the screen at the moment. So if you'd like any further information after our talk or the questions, please do let me know. So moving straight on to the next slide, it's really just an overview of the work that we're doing with independent age at the National Academy for Social Prescribing. We're working in partnership on a couple of pieces of work for older people. One is on training link workers, social prescribers, on being financially aware about the issues that impact on older people when they're in financial hardship. So the training that we're delivering overviews pension credit and attendance allowance, but also some of the social implications or the impact of being in financial hardship as an older person aged 65 and over, and what a social prescriber may be able to do to help them. So the training includes lots of hints and tips and information. There's more dates available. So there's when you get the slides, there's a link in on the slide there to the training dates. In addition, with Independent Age, we commissioned 2 sites, Leicester and Hastings, to work on co-designing and delivering social prescribing with older people. So Leicester and Hastings are both voluntary sector organisation, infrastructure organisations, and Rob is going to speak directly after me about the work in Leicester. Just to overview a little bit about what Hastings is doing, they co-designed last year and are delivering Healthy Hastings sessions, which are group activities. But uniquely, one of the things that Hastings Voluntary Action is doing is delivering community marketplace events where both professionals can attend to inform each other about their work, but actually, and crucially, members of the public can attend a range of events, community marketplace, where they can access advice, training, groups, activities, volunteering on prescription, and suit activity to their need based on their unmet non-clinical need, their unmet social need. And some great work is being done there, but similarly also in Leicester, and I'm going to now hand over to Rob to highlight some of the work there. But just before I do, one of the key things I wanted to say is that as well as face-to-face and online sessions, Leicester really focusing on participants then taking over the groups and as volunteers, so that longevity and sustainability is there, as well as capacity and confidence building. So great work in Leicester and Hastings. And over to Rob. Thank you.
Thanks, Nurjahan. I've been asked to talk about co-production and older people. And as a background, a backcloth to what I'd like to say, I'd like to pose the rhetorical question: is living longer a blessing or a curse? For those with sufficient money, health, curiosity about the world, retirement can be a blessing. For others, it can be a desert of meaninglessness, with people literally not getting up before noon because if we do, the day is too long. People on average are living 14 years longer than when I was born, but society hasn't come to terms with this. Taking active steps to co-produce an ageing better strategy at neighbourhood level is, I believe, central to healthy communities and to recognising the significant strengths, aspirations and life experience that older people can bring to life in those communities. I was chair of Leicester Ageing Together, a 17-strong organisation partnership, VCFSE, part of the National Lottery's Aging Better strategy. Middlesbrough in your region was a sister project. And I'm going to sketch out 3 case studies of co-production from the LAT experience, and then trying to pull together some of the learning from them. Next slide, please, Tom. My first case study is the Thurmby Lodge Pop-In Cafe. Thurmby Lodge is a white working class estate with no professional, statutory or voluntary provision for older people, no library, no leisure centre, no community school, no voluntary organisations. And Sally Hall, the Workers' Education Association project worker, which was one of LAT's partner organisations, when starting work on the estate, made good contact with 2 existing social groups and ran taster sessions in them, but decided also to complement this by setting up a freestanding cafe for 1 session a week in an underused community centre in which she could have more flexibility to test out some informal education approaches. The criteria she worked to in her work, this was in 2015, I think she started 2016, a focus on the more isolated and lonely older people, even though they were going to have most difficulty in plucking up the courage to cross the threshold into the cafe, using the space so that half of the main room of the prefab community centre was a social space with refreshments, newspapers, magazines, dominoes, where you could sit and observe or engage with others at your own pace. And in the other half, there were taster sessions, armchair and resistance band exercise, aromatherapy, singing, aspects of health education, benefits information. Another criterion was the sort of using we from the outset, with participants also understanding the importance of and ensuring the warm welcome for fellow participants. Sharing healthy food, taking over the administrative and promotional tasks of the cafe, and moving on to sharing their personal interests in small groups or demonstrating crafts or organising small projects. And the final criterion was about continuous improvement, continually asking, checking in with, how's it going for you, for others? What needs to be changed? What's going well? Who are we not attracting? So numbers after the May 2016 launch were low for several weeks. But this was seen as an opportunity, not a threat, an opportunity to build relationships, establish systems, develop positive norms. The early autumn saw an uptick to the early 20s, and by Christmas they were having to move to larger premises, and in the spring of 2017 had a regular 40 and occasional 50 plus participants. Sally moved on to another job, and Amanda agreed to take up the leadership voluntarily with the help of a regular, strong group of local volunteers. The cafe is still going very well over 8 years later, having survived Leicester's elongated COVID lockdown, regularly attracts 60 from a contact list of over 100, organises trips, involves residents of a local care home and a death group, etc., etc. My second case study is of the Belgrave Zoomers is stimulated by my colleague Barty Mystery. Barty was a community connector for Leicester Ageing Together in Belgrave, and Belgrave's a community with a substantial Gujarati-speaking Hindu population. She'd been working for 18 months, generally being around, being helpful, cross-fertilising information, making connections with individuals, groups and services, the standard stuff of community connection, and supporting the development of a 70-strong ladies' wellbeing group and a positive mental health support group, among others. And then lockdown struck. What does a community connector do in lockdown? Obviously, there was the emergency medicines and and food collection, but a volunteer's son was being introduced to this thing called Zoom at work. One of Barty's mental wellbeing groups helped each other onto Zoom, saw the possibilities, and despite the despair of those early days, and we seem to have forgotten the despair, started experimenting, getting the exercise classes online, trying out armchair and resistance band exercises and yoga. Groups proliferated, singing, Sudoku, mental health, Sanskrit, knit and natter. And in February 2021, less than a year since the first lockdown, there were 4,400 logins to 17 different groups. And there's a common trajectory that many users of the Zoom community follow. Having been helped to log on, they often keep camera off, mic off to start with, until gradually their confidence grows, and then turn on one and then the other, move on to responding to a discussion, to initiating one, and then in a few cases, even co-facilitating a group or starting something new. Several participants are housebound or bedbound. The potential for including more of this demographic is substantial. A core element of this growing Zoom community has been the Tuesday afternoon chit-chat group. This regularly attracts 40 to 60 people. During lockdown, there were sessions on domestic violence attracting 99 and International Women's Day 120, and is really popular with health professionals as they can both reach large numbers but also have valuable two-way discussion about the information they've shared. Their talks and those of other agencies, e.g. Severn Trent Water, energy providers, pension credit experts, are now recorded and posted on a WhatsApp group with 400 members. But a key to the development, I think, has been when individuals have approached Barty with an idea to develop the offer, instead of playing Mrs. Fix-It and saying, yeah, I'll see to that, she says, how can we do this together? What help do you need to do this from me, from other volunteers? Small groups are increasingly organising events without her, using the principles and questions she has modelled. And my third case study is of the Pakistani Youth and Community Association and the work of MISBA. This had an employment training background, came to LAT with that background, but with no experience of working with older people. Their local community was largely Muslim, with a smaller number of Hindu and Sikh families, and several from Middle Eastern and East European countries of origin. MISBA and Mustafa found it very difficult for several months to engage and build trust with older members of the communities. And then they had the bright idea of challenging their employment and training clientele, each to bring 6 elders from their own families and neighbourhoods into Pica in exchange for a free place on a new community development training course. And this was the key. Older people started coming, initially a trickle, then a flood, as word on older people's own networks got around. By the end of LAT, Pica had worked with 452, I think it was, older people. And after newcomers had been involved with the project for 3 weeks or so, MISBA would aim to meet with each one individually using the information, advice and guidance expertise she had developed through Pica's core business, checking out their experience of their first few weeks in the project, inquiring gently how life was like for them in their community and at home, their aspirations, particular needs, and encouraging them to see themselves as someone with something to give as well as to receive. And as a result of these interviews, the resultant and ever-developing Pica programme for older people had a strong foundation and used participants' strengths. So I now want to tease out some of the learning from these case studies. Next slide, please, Tom. This diagram represents the fact that places of association, places where people meet, run by faith or community organisations, libraries or self-organised by local people, are absolutely central to co-productive approaches, in my opinion, and don't get enough professional recognition, appreciation, or support and development. But however important they are, they can be a bit restrictive, and you may have to set up your own place of association to give yourself more space to operate in the way that you think is necessary. Next slide, please, Tom. The first of the 3 C's is contact. And this is the bleeding obvious, really. You cannot co-produce developments with older people unless you're in meaningful contact with them. The LAT experience and that of many Sister Aging Better programmes was that while door knocking has its place, it's very labour intensive and it's hit and miss. And given that the desired result of doorstep contact is usually to connect people, if they want, with an opportunity, a place of an alternative starting point was to focus not on the doorstep, but on the place of association and on building up what they offered and the way in which they offered it. so that there was something for people once located to connect with. Once you have a small group having a good time, you and they will have something to promote and word will spread. But it takes time. You can feel low and frustrated waiting for people to connect. And it's important, we think, to try and not see this as dead time, but an opportunity for conversations to build up your collective knowledge about older people and about aging better in your community. Nobody else is building up this body of knowledge, and manage upwards to help your management appreciate the value of this approach. And finally, under contact, space. A simple point, but important. Ideally, the space you choose has flexibility, i.e. a space for socialising, as in the Thurnby Lodge Cafe, but also a space for activity, if not in the same large space, into adjacent spaces, so that transition from one to the other is physically and psychologically easy. Next slide, please, Tom. The second C is culture, by which I mean organisational culture, the way we do things around here. How do we do things in this particular group? And I'll just quickly go through the bullets. The lesson seems to be involving all participants in co-producing the culture, not simply a small group. Establish a common purpose of aging better in our community. It's not simply a social event. It's not simply refreshments and time out, but it's actually strategic at one level, although those words wouldn't be seen as appropriate. Establishing the warm welcome is absolutely fundamental. Inclusion, asking yourselves, who are you reaching? Who are you not reaching? Listening to understand, listening. Concerns, aspirations, strengths, what's important to people. Encourage participants to listen to each other. And we've run active listening courses in these places of association. Overall, building a learning community. Though the word learning may be a turn-off for some, the tasks of learning in aging better are substantial. And keeping learning is one of the NHS's 5 steps to mental well-being. Community building. David Clarke's 3 S's. A community is a place where an individual feels significant, secure, and solid, in this case with the task of aging better. Can you build that climate and culture in your place of association? And constant collective reflective practice. Finally, social action. Instilling, encouraging in older people a belief that they have something to offer, both to each other, but also to the wider community. And across the whole piece, having fun. And now, next slide, please, Tom, to the final C in this triangle, connection. Connect internally. Yes, it's about helping people make connection with their peers when some of them have really lost the confidence to make social contact, but also to help these individual places of association make connection with other places of association in their political ward or across their district. And this is partly in order to widen the offer, but partly also to give support to the hard-pressed people who run these places of association. And finally, to help them connect to statutory services, to the NHS, build a local ecosystem. That was one of the Aging Better learnings, creating a local ecosystem around loneliness and social isolation. Older people at the core, local authority departments, public health, adult social care, adult learning, community services, etc., libraries, and then the NHS with obviously social prescribers, and the private sector, those running domiciliary care projects and housing associations and care homes. So to sum up, next slide, please, Tom. Nurture places of association. They seem to be thoroughly under-recognised and are absolutely crucial to co-production and social prescribing, in my view. Build a positive, aging better culture. Help older people connect with each other and, as collective advocates, outside agencies, helping them connect with outside agencies. Consider developing an underpinning in your local VCFSE sector of social pedagogy. I don't want to go into this in detail, but social pedagogy is a set of principles and practices where care and education meet. It's very strong in certain parts of the country and work with looked after children. It's got just as much relevance, in my view, to work with older people and other groups in communities. But if wanted, that's for another time. So thank you.
Thanks, Rob. That's really excellent, clear run through of that project, and some learning, I'm sure, for lots of people. Do we have any questions that anybody would like to ask Rob or Nurjahan? Are we okay to move on? Thank you. There may be time at the end for questions. So now, apologies, we had a slight hitch, but I'm pleased to say that Faye and Hannah are here from Barnardo's in North Cumbria. So hopefully you are okay to present.
Yeah, that's fine.
And congratulations on your recent award for your service.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Richard. Yeah, sorry about the IT hitch just there. Hello, everybody. It's lovely to meet everybody. My name's Faye Preen, and I am a Children's Service Manager from Barnardo's within North Cumbria, and I oversee two services, one of which is our Link social prescribing service for children and young people, and the other service is the North MHST, funded by the NHS in North Cumbria as well. So Richard kindly asked myself and my colleague Hannah, who I'll hand over to in a sec, to come and speak today about our social prescribing service for young people in Cumbria. So I will just let Hannah introduce herself as well.
Hi everyone, I'm Hannah Wilkinson and I'm one of the team managers within the Link social prescribing service.
So we've got a couple of slides today, but very much want this to be sort of, a chatty, interactive conversation. So if anybody does have any questions along the way, please do pop up your hand. So you can see this is just a front cover just to kickstart. I think it gives a bit of the essence of what we do here in Link. This is the team in this picture, and every Christmas time we will create Christmas hampers for the children and families that we are working with. We often raise money to create things for those hampers, and that's just a part of the community work that we do. So we'll go on to the next slide, if that's okay, Tom. So who are we? We are a social prescribing service for children and young people, and we support and work with children, young people and their families ages 5 to 19 years old. And we currently work over 4 PCN areas in North Cumbria. We'll talk a little bit about the history of the service, but we started only with 2 PCNs and we now have 4, which are Longtown and Brampton, Carlisle Healthcare, Keswick and Solway and Eden. So where some of those red stars are on the map there, the areas that we currently cover. We would love this to grow, and can notice that some of the challenges when working within PCN areas is, unfortunately, it can sometimes be a bit of a postcode lottery for children and young people, which is something that we really want to come away from. So you might get, several different people in a school, some of which can access our service because they're a registered GP practice and others can't. So this is how our sort of partnership works in terms of a primary care network perspective. And we'll talk a little bit more about what packages we offer for children and young people. And since the service began in lockdown 2020, from beginning on that it was the very first day of lockdown that we actually launched. We've co-produced the service with children and young people along with our primary care networks as well. And the reason why we were approached as a charity to complete this work was because of a PCN coming forward and saying that GPs are that stretched with how many cases they're having to see every day that they have not got the time for to be completing referrals for children, young people around mental health, or they'll be sending referrals on for mental health and wellbeing, and they'll be getting bounced back, especially for things sort of more tier 2 like our My Time service or CAMS, where they're not meeting that threshold but they need more support than what schools can offer. So when those referrals were getting bounced back to the GPs were at a loss of what to do, nor did they have the time, and really wanted an open door where those referrals could come to us and we could either support the child or young person, or at least handhold them and support them to get the right support within the community. So yeah, next slide, please, Tom. Just to give a little bit of an overview, I know it can help to see a little bit of a vision of what our service currently looks like in North Cumbria. And Ellen Buckley, who's not on the call today, she's our programme manager. And Ellen Buckley is the programme manager for all Barnardo services in Cumbria. You've then got myself overseeing this service and another service. We have 2 team managers, Hannah of which is on the call, and also Sammy. We then have 3 senior practitioners, and we have 9 project workers working on the ground with children and families. And we also have a service administrator who completes everything service admin related for the service. And our team is made up of amazing practitioners from a range of different backgrounds. We've got quite a lot of teachers, people have come from children and young families backgrounds, social workers, and we have a real diverse range. And we've found what's been essential for our service is that those professionals are embedded within their communities that they work, so they're very aware of what's happening in the communities, what services are already available, which is a massive strand throughout our whole social prescribing service to best support children, young people. So that's our team. I'll let you go on to the next slide, Tom, and I'll just hand over to Hannah.
Yes, so as a part of our service, we have our referrals meeting every week. So that's myself that sits on that as a team manager, and one of the senior pracs will go through the referrals that come into us, which I'll go on to on the next slide in a minute, talk about how we sort of decide what happens following that. But so as Faye sort of said before, we have got 4 PCN areas, and the child must be registered in one of these areas. All clinicians can refer, so we get GPs from them, surgeries, and for example, like nurse practitioners, and then basically after that, any other sort of professional can do that as well. And we get a lot of referrals in from schools as well. So we almost never decline a child. Usually if we do, it's because they haven't met their criteria, but this is a very much a one-off, and I'll go on to explain why. Because even if we can't work directly with them, we can always look to what support they would need, and then obviously refer on through our signposting. Also, so as I was just saying, we have that weekly meeting, and then we'll obviously let the practitioner and the GP, the referrer and the GP and the parents know what we've decided is the outcome following that referrals in meeting. So if we just go on to the next slide, it kind of explains what we do a little bit more following the referrals. So unless we've declined a child for whatever reason, for example, they're 4 years old and we obviously start working with someone at 5, we will complete an assessment with all of the young people that we accept. We either do this by ringing the parent, or we will meet the child, and that'll take around, well, it could take about 20 minutes and up to an hour to do the assessment, but that could include going to meet the child, for example, to get a bit more information and to get the voice of the child, which I'll talk about in a little bit more in a bit. So then we look at what we kind of offer following that assessment. So once we've done the assessment, we'll then look at what we do next, basically. So one of our offers is obviously, as I've said, one-to-one support, and this is over 12 weeks. And usually the criteria for that would be around if the child needs support with confidence, self-esteem, if they are experiencing social isolation, or help with goal settings. It could be that they might need some work around worry management or sort of low-level stress and anxiety. Anything more than that, we would probably look to refer on to our kind of sister services, MHST and My Time, which are under Bernardo's in Cumbria as well. So coordination. So coordination is another sort of branch of what we do. So once we've done the assessment and we don't feel like it's one-to-one support for us, we will look to see what we could refer to, basically what the support needs. It might be getting a bit more information about what's happening for the family, what their needs are, and what support the child or family have had before, and then we'll look to kind of signpost. But that can be quite a lengthy process, because we do like to work quite closely with the child and family to get the right support, because as some of you will be aware, you know, children often can come in and they often get the wrong support, and that's a real sort of key to our service, is that you know, sometimes on the referral form there'll be a small bit of information and you might think that it's a certain service, but actually when you look into it a little bit deeper, it's not that service that is what the child needs. And as Faye said earlier, I think the beauty of us is that we're all from different areas. We've got sort of a wide range of knowledge and expertise in what's going on in Cumbria, so we're pretty good at coordination. And also group work. So we're sort of looking to sort of extend our offer in green social prescribing offer. We've just offered a nature journaling group for children to come on as sort of a branch off what we do as well. So that's something we offer. We also do a RAP group, which is a well-being resilience action plan. And that's something we offer at the moment for children transitioning to high school, which is working really well. So that's sort of our group offer and also our school offer as well. And schools can sort of refer a bulk of children into us for that. So we also do sort of drop-ins in different areas. We've done them in schools, and then children can just come and chat to us, or we would do them in the GP surgeries, for example, which works well in one certain area. And also we attend kind of community events as well. Yes, if you want to go on the next slide. This is you, Faye.
Thank you. And just to touch on something that Hannah mentioned there, I think a massive passion of ours, which a lot of services have come away from, and I think we need to remember, is that we're not a mental health service, we are a social prescribing service. And I think in this day and age it can all often get wrapped up in one. Of course we address mental health and low level emotional health and well-being, but we are a social prescribing service, and that's the beauty of this. And something that we feel passionately about, which is we're hoping to embed a lot next year, as Hannah said, is that green and blue social prescribing. So I think, as we know, a lot of the literature is, are we actually getting this all wrong? And should we be starting every young person that comes into the Link service should start on a nature-based pathway before we try anything else? So there's a lot of conversations going on around that at the moment. So as I said, we launched in 2020, spent a couple of months developing. We had children, young people heavily involved in that process. They created the name, the logo, young people sat on our interview panel. And we then started to begin building the team. So the team has actually over doubled from when we last started. The fortunate thing is that as one PCN became involved, the good word spread, should we say, and others have got more involved, and the team has significantly grown. As a service, we take a full strengths-based, flexible approach. Something else that we feel very passionately about is this isn't about putting young people in boxes and young people fitting our intervention. No, we need to change our service to support those children, young people, and that's going to be individual for every young person. And as we've said before, community is a huge part of this. We pride ourselves on being embedded within the community, whether that's the relationships that we have with schools, attending community events such as Pride. There's a lot of work that goes on into Link being embedded within the community and the GP practices as well. And as we're also aware, there is significant evidence out there to suggest that there's no point us just working with the child or young person. We need to work with the system, and we have a lot of beauty and flex within our service that our approach is to work with the child and the family and the network, so that's a huge part of what we do. Next slide please, Tom.
Yeah, I think so. Following on from what Faye's just said there, we use an in-house model, and it's called CISO, and that is an acronym for Child Directed, System Focused, Strengths Based and Outcome Informed. So I guess with child directed, as Faye was saying there, we want to make sure that that child is getting exactly what support they need, and we talk about being sort of an authentic chameleon, and I guess one-to-one support is very much planned and structured by what that child's goals is and what that child wants to achieve by the end of the support. And that's really important to us, that we don't go in with, other services sort of do have a structured piece of work, but that isn't Link. So I think that's really important for that child moving forward and for their needs to be met. System focused, as Faye just said, obviously looking at the whole picture. One thing we recognise in Barnardo's is that we might get a referral in for the child, but often sometimes it might be something within the family that's actually going on. So being mindful about that, and actually what support might, say, mum or dad need as well. Strengths based, so it is what it says really. Looking at it through a strengths based viewpoint, I guess, rather than just what's going wrong, what's not working, but what is actually working for the child and the family. And that's how we work one-to-one and do our coordinations. And the last thing is outcome informed. So we check in with the child at the start of the session to check how they are, and then that creates an outcome for the end of this piece of support, and we can see if the child's kind of progressed in what they're scoring, and that's really important to help us know if they've met their goals and feel better in themselves. And if not, then we do signpost to other support, so that ongoing support need is always being identified for that child. And I think on the next slide, one thing that sort of goes through all that is the voice of the child, basically, and that is something that we sort of pride ourselves on.
Hannah, sorry to interrupt. Can we start to just wrap up, if that's right, in another minute?
Yeah,
or so?
I think we're near the end now. Yeah, that's
cool.
fine.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think you're just the next slide, Faye. Sorry. Oh, I think this was me. Yeah, so that's just some nice feedback. I'll not go through it, but yeah, just some lovely feedback from schools, parents, and the child about how they feel better in themselves, and how the parent feels like they understand the child a little bit better as well. So,
and there's just one more slide left, Tom. I'll just sorry, that's just some pictures. I'm sure these slides will go out, won't they, Richard? Just some pictures of some work with young people, and just the next one. Just to round up, there's just some statistics from the last financial year of how many referrals we picked up. Obviously, it was incredible news for us a couple of months ago to win the NASP award for Best Children, Young People Social Prescribing Project. And we've had a few questions of why do you think you won? And I truly think that we are a social prescribing service, but we really are an enhanced social prescribing service. If we look at traditional social prescribers, which in a lot of settings are often sat within the GP practices, and 80% of that work is around coordination, we offer so much more than that. And it might be that a young person comes in on one strand of the service, let's say one-to-one work, and then they can go off into group work. So there's lots of different things that we offer. And finally, there's an Edge Hill University logo there because we are currently 2 years into a 3-year study with Edge Hill University. They are evaluating our social prescribing service, and the final report will be coming out next summer, which is we're really proud to be working with them on this, because we know there's quite little evidence and articles around the impact of social prescribing. So hopefully that will be going out next year, which we'll be able to share with everybody. So yep, that's us. Hannah and I will both put our contact details in the chat if anybody wishes to make contact with us following this meeting. We'll be available to answer any other questions. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thanks very much, both of you. That was great. And I think there were 1 or 2 questions in the chat. If you wouldn't mind having a go at answering those, that would be great. Appreciated, because we're running a bit short of time. So I'm going to ask Dawn if she wouldn't mind saying a little bit about her work and the project down in Hartlepool and introducing the video.
Hi everyone, I'm Dawn Robinson and I work for Hartley Power Community Trust. I was taken on as an engagement worker, and then I was asked to work with the YPSPs as a capacity coordinator. And our YPSPs have had up to that time been working for around 2 years, of which in that time they were given a list that sort of got bigger and bigger of things that didn't happen in Hartlepool that the young people wanted to happen or needed. This list was anime. There was no anime. They wanted animation. They wanted to be involved in things like that. There was also on that list about transport, lack of transport, counselling, how to access counselling much quicker. So this is what I was given. I was given this list to get on with, see what I could do with it. And one of the first things, obviously, looking down this list was to put this list together.
Nice.
Yeah, and the idea was, right, anime was sort of at the top of that, along with animation. What could I do with that? One of the first things was I started to talk to some of the voluntary organisations. This, as I say, I was employed in March. By July, I'd been talking to the voluntary organisations, and they were absolutely inundated with things that they do. Had a lot of half sessions. So what it meant was I had to start looking elsewhere. What could I do? The idea was start going to local businesses, how we could make this work. And what we came to Geek Retreat. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to let Tom put the video on and let actually the video and the young people tell you sort of how it's gone and how it's working at the moment.
So we thought we would try to make... It started with a list from our youth personal social prescribers and their young people. Guess what was at the top of that list? Anime and animation. There's very little of it in Hartlepool, so we thought we would try to make something happen. So bring on Geek Retreats Adam and Chris. They gave us a safe space and 4 hours every Tuesday night, initially for 12 weeks. These first 12 weeks were funded by the PFC Trust. We used some of this funding to bring in our very own art teacher, Solace, a young man who is partially deaf and autistic. From the very first night, the sessions have been well attended, as you can see from the photos. After feedback from the first night, several changes were made. At the end of every other week, the young people, parents and carers all fill in a questionnaire. This is Charlotte, one of our group's young people. Charlotte's non-verbal, but since attending the group has grown in confidence to the point where she has made her first ever friend, began sixth form college, and even comes to sessions on her own. She's also asked if she can volunteer at the Kiddies Pokemon group on a Saturday morning. the feedback about pricing from other organisations, newer and cheaper meal offers were put in place for families. Each week, our young people are given the choice of what they would like to do. This gives them a sense of control. Always look forward and believe in yourself and anime. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Sennight. Happy birthday to you. To us. Hip hip. Hip hip. Hip hip. You've made it all possible. Thank you, Dawn. Thank you, Dawn. Hey! And now for an update on our Charlotte. After volunteering at Geek Retreat, she's now working for our local hospice. She's working hard at college, still turns up on a Tuesday night, but constantly talks and we can't shut her up. From everyone at Send Night, thank you for your support. Here's to more years of Send Night madness.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so it's, as I say, and you can see everybody really enjoys themselves. It's used very well from a lot of other organisations. They use it and they tend to use it as a stepping stone with their young people to, you know, move on, go on to other things, get to the place where they can do things themselves rather than have somebody holding their hands. It's really doing well. It's doing that well that actually there's another Harrogate shop now that is doing the same thing on a Tuesday. They've just started again, and it's in its first 12 weeks pilot scheme as well. And also apparently Durham Community Trust, they're also quite happy with starting another project like this. And Geek Retreat Hartlepool and Geek Retreat Sunderland are helping with that. It's something that really young people need. We need to be able to take note of what they want, what their needs are, and just, you know, help them on their way a little bit, I think. It's non-judgmental. It's safe environment. The young people, there's no sort of age range. We did originally start with an age range, and to be honest, we've widened that up as people have been in touch with us. It's also a really good place for parents, carers, support workers, PAs to also get peer support. So we also signpost as well. And the other thing is, we're also now from this, we're also working with Transport Users Forum, and also we've got a bereavement project in hand, and hopefully, fingers crossed, that will follow on. from this project itself, we're also hoping to widen that project to older people, as we found out that from the age 25 up to 45, they are asking for the same type of thing. So that's the next project. Any
That's great.
questions?
Thanks, Dawn. I think it's amazing what you've been able to do down there, and I keep bringing it up at various meetings to show people just the power of what can be done with a relatively small amount of money in the voluntary sector, and the difference that you're making to people like Charlotte's lives. You know, it's just incredible, and also it's quite different in terms of bringing in private sector and getting them to help with that provision as well.
It is. I mean, it's sustainability as well. That's what we're looking for. And obviously, sort of in the first couple of months of finding out, you know, what we needed, how we were going to sort of keep it going, you find that a lot of our voluntary organisations, unfortunately, do need the funding to keep these things going. So sometimes it's not always easy, and I think sometimes our young people actually suffer for that. If that's, you know, if they're only given it for 12 months, then the funding stops. Where do they get the next piece of funding?
Yeah.
That means that sometimes our young people are left, you know, they've been enjoying it, and then all of a sudden it stops. Where do they go from that? So that's my thinking. How do we keep that going? How do we keep anything sustainable?
Thank you. Yeah, good question. I think we need to wrap it up there, just so we've got time to ask people to give us a little bit of feedback, if that's okay. We've got a little feedback survey, which is on the slide. And if you wouldn't mind spending a couple of minutes before you leave, giving us that really just helps us develop the series and plan our next webinar. But as you're doing that, I just want to thank all of the speakers. They were excellent presentations, and loads of good examples in there, loads about co-production and working with people and not doing to them. So that follows on nicely from our last webinar. Lots about using community assets. Yeah, thank you very, very much. And if you are not already joined onto our Healthy Communities and Social Prescribing network, then please do that. I think we're going to I think there's a link on the slides to that, and we'll send out the recording and the slides in an email. And thank you for bearing with us with our little technical hitches.